Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm a mum of 2 girls and I work for myself from home. My main income comes from my 2 websites, one of which is a parenting website and the other one is full of tips for saving money and making money from home. Today's video is all about sinking funds. So I mentioned sinking funds in a video I did in December about frugal living tips, and one of my tips was to have a sinking fund. And I said then that I would talk about it a little bit more in January, which is the time that I normally review my sinking fund and just take you through what goes into my sinking fund and hopefully just give you a little bit of an introduction to them and how they can benefit you and your budget. First of all, what is a sinking fund? Well, a sinking fund is simply a pot of money, a savings account, or something that you have earmarked maybe in your current account, which is set aside for annual costs. So it is costs that you know are coming up, which distinguishes it from an emergency fund. An emergency fund is in case there's a sudden, your washing machine breaks and it floods the downstairs and you've got to deal with all of the costs to do with that. Now, obviously you might hope that your insurance would deal with that, but there might be some excess. So an emergency fund is very, very different to your sinking fund. Your sinking fund is for the annual costs that you know are coming up. Now, in my personal opinion, I don't like the term sinking fund. I don't really feel like it kind of captures what it is. When I first heard the term sinking fund, I couldn't even guess what it was. I assumed it was a savings, something to do with savings, but I don't get from the name what it is. I don't know what a better name would be. The closest I came to one was like, it's an anti-panic fund because it means that you're prepared for those annual expenses. It gives you a chance to get ready so that you can pay those annual bills and there's no scrambling around one month to find all of that money that you need. What does a sinking fund actually cover? So your sinking fund, as I've said, it covers known expenses, annual costs. So this type of thing might include anything to do with your regular car maintenance and bills. So car insurance, car MOT, car tax, service if you get that done, your home insurance renewal as well, your Christmas expenses. So say for example you host like I do, it's a lot more expensive than if you're invited around to someone's house. The presents, birthdays and birthday parties that you might have to pay for your kids. Your annual holidays are included in there as well as like maybe if you're someone who takes quite regular long weekends away, you'd want to put that into your sinking fund because that's something that you do regularly, that's something that you know that's going to come back up. I'm self-employed, so my tax doesn't automatically come off my pay. It's been quite a difficult mindset adjustment over the last few years to see that money come in and really, really discipline myself that actually that's not all your money. Some of that is the government's and you need to put it to one side. So that's another thing, my tax bill, that goes into my sinking fund. And although you might expect your emergency fund to cover a lot of things to do with what might go wrong with your house, you can also use your sinking fund to put aside money for stuff that you know eventually you're going to have to pay for that. So for example, last year I used our sinking fund to pay for our kitchen. Now, those who followed me for a while will know that it has been an unmitigated disaster and cost me a lot more money than what I had hoped. It is now a kitchen, however, the sinking fund, my budget was blown, put it that way, and that's a whole other video going into what exactly happened there. So for example, to do with your house, like maybe maybe someone's already told you, look, when they were servicing your boiler, for example, this boiler is going to need replacing in the next 12 months. So sinking fund would be where you'd be putting that. So if you know that there is something coming up with your house, maybe you've got a few fence panels missing out the back because there's been some heavy weather, you would use your sinking fund to cover that as well. Your sinking fund is an item on your monthly budget because every month you're putting money into that sinking fund so that you're prepared for those annual expenses that are coming up. Since I started using a sinking fund, I found that there's a number of benefits to having one. The big one being that it just means that it's less stress for you. You're prepared for those things that are coming up. My car has all of its annual costs come all at once in the middle of the summer, which is in the past has been a bit of a, oh my God, I've got to pay the MOT and service, I've got to pay the tax, and I've got to pay the insurance renewal all in one go. And then if there's any problem at the MOT, which means that the car needs repaired, that's extra cost too. It's so much better to be prepared for that, know that it's coming. If you can see things coming, they're not going to stress you out when the time comes because you've prepared for them. And a huge advantage of paying a lot of your bills annually is that you'll save money. Things like your home insurance, your car insurance, Amazon Prime membership. It's cheaper if you pay annually, all in one lump sum at the start of, you know, your new contract or whatever, rather than dividing it up into monthly payments. And another huge thing is you'll just budget more efficiently. If you're fully aware, if you've got your eyes wide open, if you've got everything written down, you know exactly where you're at, you know exactly what costs are coming, you'll budget more efficiently. You'll be aware that you know, can't splash out on that particular thing you want to treat yourself to that month. I do think an important part of budgeting is being able to treat yourself occasionally, but there's not really much fun in treating yourself if the following month it leaves you totally stressed and wiped out and there's no money and you're in your overdraft and you're paying interest on that overdraft, and it's just a spiral that keeps on going. So I think when you are fully aware of all the costs you've got coming up, you budget more efficiently, and yeah, you're just happier. Mental well-being is just a huge thing to look after, I think, and money problems, money stresses can really weigh heavily on that. To help give you an idea of how this works, and it is really straightforward, but I'll share with you my January sinking funds review just so you get an idea of how I do it. There might be a different way for you to do it that works better for you. This is just what I do. I get a notebook, I write down all the things that are my annual expenses, and then I figure out how much I'm going to need to set aside. Obviously my sinking fund already has some money in it because I've been doing this for some time. If you're starting from scratch, don't panic. There's no time like the present to get started. You might find it a bit of a struggle in the first year. Once you get into the rhythm of putting that money aside and just being prepared, you'll find that eventually, you know, your sinking fund is at a point where it's covering all those annual expenses quite easily for you. So the first item on my sinking fund is my tax. I'm not going to tell you how much I set aside for my tax because that's me telling you how much I earn, and yeah, I'm not quite ready to reveal that on YouTube, but I do pay tax. I do have to set aside a fair amount. That is the biggest item on my sinking funds list, and yeah, it's always my number one thing that I'm thinking about, and I make sure I set aside the correct amount every single month so that I am covered when that tax bill comes up. At the moment, HMRC, so they take money from me in January and they also take money from me in June. I believe they're switching to a system where they're going to take money quarterly, but that's not for another couple of years. So I think in many ways that'll be a good thing in terms of just not having this big pot of money that isn't yours in your bank account. On the other hand, at the moment, that money set aside for tax is earning me interest because it's stuck in a savings account with a fairly decent interest rate, an easy access one obviously, but a savings account with a decent rate of interest. So swings and roundabouts to that one. So the next items on my list are all to do with my car, and my car, as I've said before, all the costs come up at the same time of year, which is, you know, you can't fight it, but it just means that it's a very expensive month in summer where all my car costs come up. So I've got my MOT and service, which is about £250. I've got my insurance renewal, which is about £250. My car tax, which last year was £165. And then for the last couple of years, I have found that my car has needed repairs, either after the MOT or mid-year. So in my sinking fund, I'm putting down £200. Now you may argue, well, you know, anything to do with your car breaking down, should that not be in an emergency fund? I would say that because I know because of the age of my car, it is likely to have something at the MOT. I believe it was brake pads and something to do with the tyres last year. There's going to be something that needs to be dealt with. So I'm going to set aside £200 just to make sure that just in case that comes up, I'm prepared for it, because that is £865 worth of costs. And if that sneaks up on you, it's actually, you know, it's a little bit daunting to deal with. So setting a little bit aside every month leading up to that month where all my car costs are just means that it's a much less stressful situation. Still a little bit annoying having to pay all that money, but much less stressful. Another item on my sinking funds list is holiday. So last year we holidayed in the UK, and which actually used to be, I think, a cheap option, but I don't really think it is anymore. And I budgeted £2,000 for that, which we did go a little bit over. This year I am budgeting a little bit more. I'm being a little bit more ambitious. I'm going to try and put aside £4,000 for holiday. Now that could just be one holiday, or it may be that we do a holiday and a long weekend somewhere, which is something that we've been talking about. So I'm going to set aside that much for holiday. I think that's fairly reasonable. I haven't done all of my research into holidays yet, but from what I'm looking at for the holidays that I hope that we can do this year, I think that should cover it. So the next item on my list is another fun one following on from holidays. It's birthday parties. So I've got 2 daughters. They're both still at the age where they have birthday parties, and they're also at that age where they seem to have like a lot of friends. You know, you get a little bit older and maybe you have like 4 or 5 good friends at school. Maybe you have a few more, but like at the moment, my youngest is, you know, friends with like 40 people that she wants to invite to birthday parties. So it's fine. It's all good. You know, birthday parties are an important part of growing up, so I make sure that I budget for that. So this year I'm budgeting £600 for both of them. I don't think it's actually going to end up costing me that much because I've already booked my eldest daughter's birthday party, and thankfully she's picked an activity that's a bit cheaper this year. So that's going to cost me, I think, about £140. My other daughter's birthday last year cost hundreds of pounds, over, I think it was about £400 for one of my daughter's birthday parties last year. I'm hoping to stick to a £300 absolute maximum limit. I'm thinking maybe we'll do like a hall hire and I'll get in an entertainer to do some bits, and then all the other costs obviously for things like decorations and cake and party bags and that kind of stuff. So £600 for birthday parties for the kids. I don't normally throw myself a birthday party. I don't normally throw my husband a birthday party. We normally like go out for a nice meal. And also birthday gifts, so that's separate to the birthday parties. This includes gifts for other members of the family. So I don't necessarily buy big stuff for other members of my family, but I've got quite a lot of nieces and nephews. To be honest with you, I tend to just give them cash because I don't actually know like what they have and what they don't have. So I'll give them sort of £10–15 each every single birthday, and that seems to work out fine. Obviously my daughters, I do buy them presents. My husband, I tend to buy a little something. We don't spend a lot on each other at birthdays actually. We generally, there might be the odd birthday where we splash out very, very occasionally if there's something specific that we know that the other one wanted. But in general, we're quite frugal with each other's birthdays. As I said, we might take each other out for a meal, but we won't splash out on a super duper expensive gift. I'll buy my parents gifts, but again, unless it's a special birthday, like last year was my mum's 70th, I generally won't spend that much. My parents actually like don't really need that much stuff, so I'll buy them something sort of nice that I know they'll like but is not too expensive. So I'm setting aside £500 for birthday gifts. And following on from the fun stuff, Christmas, that's another thing that's really, really essential for me to be saving for throughout the year. We generally host Christmas, and so the food, the drink, it all adds up. It is actually quite expensive. So that coupled with presents means that I need to set aside a fair amount. I budget £1,000 in my sinking fund for Christmas. Another item on the sinking fund list, a bit of a boring one but very necessary, house insurance. So that costs around £150 a year for the renewal. We don't pay it monthly, we pay it annually, which ultimately saves us a little bit of money every year. And the final category is house costs. So last year our house cost category was like thousands of pounds because we were doing up the kitchen. It was quite scary. This year I have no plans for large projects. No plans at all. I'm hoping to just have a year where I do a little bit of DIY around the house, and that's kind of it. There's a couple of bits of furniture that I feel that we need to get. I say need. There's a couple of bits of furniture that would be nice for us to get this year just to finish off places like the dining room, which needs a console table, and a few other bits and pieces as well. I want to get a new rug for the hallway, that kind of thing. And we've had a leaking roof for the last 6 weeks. We've already paid some money to someone to come and fix it. Unfortunately, the leak is still ongoing. So I know that that is an expense that I need to deal with. I'm very much hoping that that will be dealt with in the next couple of weeks because I don't really want to then have to deal with the costs of all the fixing that needs to be done. As it is, I think we are going to have to get a decorator in to deal with some of the mess that's happened to the ceiling because of the leak. Again, that could be a whole other video ranting about the roof, which I won't go on too long. But for the house, I'm setting aside £600 to cover things like getting the roof sorted out, getting the bits of furniture that I know that we're going to buy, getting the rug that I want for the hallway. But no major work this year, no major work. So if anything crops up unexpected, that would be coming out of my emergency fund. Adding all of those categories up then, how much do we get to? So that's £7,715 annually that needs to go into my sinking fund, obviously not including my tax bill. And that's going to be £645 a month that I need to set aside. Now you may think, oh gosh, that does seem like a lot, £645 a month, not a small amount of money. But when you consider, as I said, that the car cost me £865 in just 1 month in the summer for all the bills, it's much better to be prepared putting aside that £645 a month so that I don't have 1 month where I'm like panicking about how I'm going to cover things. And also obviously Christmas, that's £1,000 that I spend on Christmas. It's quite a lot, it's an expensive time of year, and there'll always be additional costs around Christmas as well, like having to get the kids a new Christmas jumper to go into school, or some kind of nativity costume, or the Christmas fair, or whatever, you know, or unexpected gifts. There's always something at Christmas that just piles on the costs a little bit. So it's much better for me to try and foresee how much is this going to cost me, putting aside that £645 a month so that I'm prepared. So how can you get started with your own sinking fund? Well, first of all, itemise all of the things that are annual costs for you, using my examples as a guide. Add it all up and divide it by 12 so that you know the monthly cost that that's going to be. And then set up a direct debit. That could help you so that it's going out of your bank account at the start of the month or whenever it is that your pay date is. And that way it's automatically coming off of your monthly salary, so you're not tempted to spend it. Obviously some people do just segment it in their current account. However you want to organise your sinking fund is totally up to you. I personally put mine in an easy access savings account that has a decent interest rate on it, so that I'm making a little bit of money on it every month as well. It's always a good idea to review your sinking fund regularly and make notes where you've gone over budget so that you're prepared for next year. And if after looking at your sinking fund, figuring out how much it's going to cost you to set that money aside and feeling like you might be a little bit stretched, this is a good time to review your monthly budget and see if there's any way that you can cut that back a little bit. And I've got a blog post, which I'll link below, which can give you a few tips on that. Or you can look to boost your income, and a side hustle is a really great way of doing that. I have another video all about side hustles, and also I've got a blog post with over 70 ideas for you to get started. I hope you found this video useful and it's given you some good ideas for setting up your own sinking fund. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next upload. Bye!